Hi, welcome to Assessments Past, Present, and Future, specifically for New York State. I'm Jennifer Hathaway, and I want to give you just a little bit of background about who I am and why I'm creating this presentation for you before I get started. It's always kind of weird doing these videos because I'm here by myself. It's kind of like, I feel like Sheldon Cooper doing Fun with Flags. There's really no one out there listening right now. So it's kind of bizarre, but hopefully you get something out of the next 45 minutes with me. So this will be a 45-minute video, and then at the end I'll explain a little bit about the badge system and the task that you will complete with my help. So I am currently a teacher in upstate New York in Malone, which is kind of right near the Canadian border. I teach 7th grade physics and chemistry. But I have also taught 15 years of biology and environmental science at the high school level. And then I taught a few years at 6th grade of earth science. And I've also taught 8th grade middle school life science. So I've kind of bounced all over the place. I like change in my career. And the worst part of my day probably is teaching the same lesson 5 times. But I've learned a lot in all of those positions. I've also run an elementary science camp that was for ages 3 all the way up to 6th grade. And so I did that for about 6 years and tried to pull a lot of the new content into that camp as well. So if you're an elementary teacher watching this, I will say I've not actually taught at the elementary level other than the summer camp. So I know that your experience is unique, and I don't pretend to know what your day is like at all. So I want to just start by saying that everything that I'm going to give you today, I try to be as realistic as possible and understand that I'm presenting to you a situation that's like the perfect environment. But with COVID this year, and then with your teaching schedules and the lack of time that you have for science, I completely understand that many of our goals aren't always realistic. So I've always said that really my dream job is to pack a VW van full of science supplies and go around New York State and kind of push into classrooms and do STEM fun days and kind of be that teaching help for elementary teachers, just because I know your plates are so full, and having the hands-on piece and the massive science sometimes is just too much. So if anyone knows someone that wants to fund my van, let me know, and I'll be there to help you in your classroom. But because I can't be there, I like to do these video workshops that you can kind of complete on your own time, and then hopefully add a little bit of what I'm offering for help into your classroom. So you have this slideshow. This should have been shared with you so that you could follow it throughout the presentation. And my email is here, so you can reach out to me through email at any time. And then I will get back to you and we can do a video meet one-on-one. I can share my phone number and we can talk over the phone. Whatever works for you, I'm definitely happy to help. So today we're talking about assessments, and my hope is that if you're watching this workshop, that you have had some background, either workshops or experience with the new standards, the format, and all of that. If you're watching this presentation and you haven't, then please reach out to your BOCES or to me, or anyone that's a science kind of expert in your district, and make sure that you kind of review the standards, just because some of this might be a little bit confusing to you if you haven't had any practice with the new standards yet. Okay, so we're going to start today with kind of going over these new standards and just a really brief overview, and then I will jump right into the assessment piece. So on this slideshow, everything that's underlined is a clickable link. Pretty much everything on the screen is. So this first link is the New York State standards. So if you click on the link, it just takes you to a PDF of the standards. It's 80 pages because it's all of the standards for pre-K through 12. But if you haven't really looked at that and you have time, yeah, I know that's funny, time. But if you have time and you want to look at those, it's sometimes helpful to see what other grade levels are doing, all the way up to 12th grade and all the way down to pre-K, just to have some idea of what background your students have and where they're moving toward in the future. So I'm going to go over just the basics of what these standards look like with this page. So some websites out there have a page similar to this, but this is one that I created because it's what makes most sense to me. But there are some resources out online that have a lot more detail on this, so that might be something that you want to look for if this is confusing. So this is the standards page. So any grade level, this is what it's going to look like when you open it up. The grade level is over here, and then we have some letters that denote whether it's earth science, physical science, or life science. And these really at the top are just the learning objectives or targets. So in my class, these are things that I know the student needs to be learning these by the end of the unit or the lesson on this specific standard. And then over here, we have a blue area, an orange area, and a green area. And if you've already had a workshop on this, I'm sorry for repeating, but this part's going to be really important in order to understanding where the state is going with the New York State standards, with the new assessments that are kind of matched to those. So we have the blue section. This is all about the scientific method. So this is the section where if you're doing hands-on experiments with your students or labs, you're going to hit these standards. The middle part is the content checklist. So this is what the old standards look like. This is really just the checklist of concepts that need to be taught. And the old standards from 1996, that's pretty much all they were, was just the content checklist. And then on the far right, these cross-cutting concepts, these are skills that students need to be successful, not only in science, but in other subjects as well. And so like finding patterns, looking at cause and effect, those types of skills. And so when the whole idea of these new standards is based around 3D learning or 3 dimensions. And you may have heard that before, perhaps you haven't, but if you do any more work with the standards, it's something that you definitely are going to hear. And all that means is anytime you present a lesson to students or anytime you're assessing students, you want to make sure that you are including all 3 dimensions. So you want students to have some experience that will allow them to build those science and engineering skills, kind of like the scientific method where you're planning out an experiment, you're collecting data, analyzing data. Then you want them to make sure that they're hitting all the skills in the content checklist, the second dimension. And then the third dimension is to make sure students are practicing kind of analyzing data with finding patterns, looking for cause and effect, those types of things. So when we get to the end of this presentation today, we're really going to be focusing on making sure that the assessment questions, whether they're formative or summative, that they include all 3 of these areas. Okay. Just to give you a little background on why I'm doing workshops and why I'm working as a consultant kind of on the side. For our BOCES region, FEH BOCES, I am the science specialist. So I've been to trainings at the state level for about 5 years now to kind of learn about the standards. And then my role is to train teachers in my area. I have had requests from other areas like yours to kind of offer some workshops. So this is just one of the workshops that I offer. So here, if you all are not going to these state conferences most likely, but there is a link for you. So you can find the same information that I'm getting, or at least some of it. So on this page, this is the New York State Education Department, and this is the page where they post science updates. So normally it's a slideshow format, and you can see the last update was released in the fall of this year. And then over on the side here, there are some other resources as well. This website is a little bit difficult to navigate, but it is getting better over time. In the last couple of years, this has become a bit more organized and it's easier to use. So that link is there for you. And then if there are any changes, I know in the last couple of years, there's been lots of changes to when this new test will come out because of COVID. So all of those changes and announcements are put on that page. So if you're ever wondering, you can click right there. The new test timeline. So this is the most recent version of when the new test will be released. So according to this timeline, the last grade 4 assessment is going to be this spring in 2022. Next year, 2023, will be a no test year. And then in 2024 will be the first administration of the new state test, and it will be at grade 5 instead of grade 4. Okay. So like I said, if that changes again due to COVID, then they will put a new, they'll put a notice out on that state website. And then I always post updates as well on some of the pages that I manage. So I'll point you in that direction at the end of this presentation. Okay. So feel free to reach out to me at any point if anything that I'm saying is confusing, or if I lose you when I'm doing things like this and I have no one to stop me and ask me questions. I tend to go really fast. And sometimes I feel like when I don't have a script in front of me, I bounce around a bit, and it's nice if you reach out and let me know if you're confused about anything. I really appreciate that. I want to help you and I want to answer the questions that you have. So that's one of the downsides to this video format, is there's no one out there to stop me if I'm confusing. So please make sure you reach out if you get confused at all. Okay, so if you are an elementary teacher, K through or pre-K through 5, I had a teacher working with me that kind of put together this summary. So if you're looking at standards in the 80-page document, it can get really it's a lot of paper to kind of flip through. So one of the teachers in Lake Placid put together this list for me, and it is all of the science standards that are K through 5, but pre-K and kindergarten are the same standards. So this works for either level. All kind of summarized nicely into these few pages so that it's kind of a quick look at each grade level. So like I said before, if you are a 5th grade teacher, obviously the test is going to be on your shoulders and you are going to be preparing students for that. However, the one thing that I really want teachers to understand in the spirit of community, and also because of the new format of the test, it's going to be extremely important, and I can't say this enough. It's so important for teachers in pre-K all the way up through 4th grade to really help prepare these students for that 5th grade assessment, because not only is it going to be science skills, but there are a lot of other new skills and new tasks that students are going to have to be competent in, that in order to really be doing well on that 5th grade test, a lot of the other grade levels are going to need to kind of help support those 5th grade teachers and prepare students. So like I said, look up and look down at your grade level, and this is a nice form to do that, to make sure you understand what content students are being taught at the other grade levels. That's really helpful. And then the last piece of information I have in this little box is 3-dimensional learning. And a lot of teachers have asked me, what is 3-dimensional learning? A lot of teachers are really confused about that, or it doesn't really make sense. And it really is simple. It's just those 3 columns from the standards page, and it's making sure that when you teach or assess students that you're pulling in skills from all 3 areas. That's my summary, but I wanted to make sure I provided a link with more information, because my summary is very simplified. So there's a lot more information here from Next Generation Science with, if you want to read about that, if you have any questions, that's one place to find more answers for that. Okay, so before I jump into the kind of bulk of the presentation here on assessments, I just want to say that this is my 22nd year of teaching. And when I first started this work, I was not a good student in these PD sessions I attended at the state. I'm very skeptical, because a lot of changes have happened in the 22 years that I've been in this field. And a lot of times they say more changes are happening and then they're never rolled out from the state. Or, I just feel like more keeps getting piled on. And I can imagine at the elementary level that that's even more overwhelming, because not only do you have new standards in science, but it's math, ELA. There are constant changes within districts with what types of curriculum districts are using. And so I get it. I feel like it's just really overwhelming to be a teacher at times. And when people are like, here's more new stuff, it can just kind of be too much. And so I do want to say that I was skeptical and not really looking forward to these changes, but I've in the last 5 years have made a lot of changes in my classroom, and I've tried to adjust to these standards and the new teaching style, and I have seen huge benefits to these new standards. And so at first I was very skeptical, but now I'm very much on board with kind of embracing this new teaching style. And the assessments that I'm going to show you may seem very overwhelming, and I agree 100% that this is going to be a huge leap for some of our students. But if we can kind of work toward this goal, I personally am not one that supports teaching to a test. I feel like providing students with experiences that are going to enhance their future are far more important than any grade that they would receive on a test. However, I feel that if we teach in a way that prepares students for these assessments, and kind of tweak it so that it's best for your grade level, I really do feel like it's beneficial for students and their future. So I do want to say that, just so you understand, I'm not here trying to sell you on this. Anything that I present to you, I really do feel that it is beneficial to students. But being realistic, we all have to get our students through these tests. And so the plan that I'm going to give you today is my best suggestion for what I think is going to be helpful for you as a teacher moving forward to prepare your students. So in this first video presentation, I'm going to talk a lot about just specifically the test, what I think it's going to look like, how it compares to the old test, and then, how I think you can have students practice questions that will prepare them for these new assessments. In the second video that I am releasing, I don't know if you'll end up taking that workshop or not, but the second video is more focused on how to prepare units or how to kind of organize your science content in your classroom so that students are prepared for the assessments. Now, I know a lot of you are using box content. So it could be Mystery Science, it could be Smithsonian, it could be BOCES 4 kits. There's lots of different kits out there, and lots of different content, but I've looked at a lot of the different kits, and they all have positives and they all have negatives. And even if it's not a content negative, it may be the time it takes to get through the content in that kit. So there are pros and cons to everything. But one thing I want to kind of focus on today is making sure that you understand that even if you don't have time to get through your kit, there are still things you can do in your classroom to help prepare students for those 5th grade assessments. And so I'm trying to give you kind of the basics, and then you can apply that to whatever way you teach science in your classroom. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is this is a link to the New York State 1996 standards, like the assessments link to those. So this is the past of assessments. And so I'm going to click on grade 4 here. And if you want to go through and look at the different grade levels, you can. I provided the full link and not the link just to this test because I wanted you to be able to click where you want to and look at what you want to. If you're 8th grade, you may want to start there. So I'm jumping to page 24 to look at this question specifically because it meshes well with a new question from the new assessment that I'm going to give you for a sample. So this question is based on knowledge of ecology and ecosystems, and you can see that they have a diagram, and the first question says identify 2 organisms labeled in the diagram that are producers. So that's kind of like an understand a vocab word, producer, and be able to identify an example of it. And then it says identify the source of energy for all organisms in this pond environment. So students would need to know that it's the sun, which provides energy for the plants, and then that energy moves up through a food chain or through a food web. And then it's asking students pretty much in this question just the definition of the word lifespan. And then it's asking a very vague question about give 2 reasons why an animal might move from one area to live in another area. And, the state's looking for answers like food supply or maybe climate, not having predators, availability of water, things like that. But again, this question is very vague. If I gave this question to my 7th graders, especially on a second page where the picture is not on the page, they would struggle. I would get some probably pretty wild answers there, just because some students aren't really good at understanding. They need to go back to the diagram and really think about it through that frame. So this is an old fourth grade assessment, okay? And this is on ecosystems. So now what I want to show you, because teachers ask, every time I talk about assessments, teachers want to know what's it going to look like, right? So New York State has no sample tests out. They're supposed to be doing field testing. So I'm really hoping that will come out this year, and then we'll be able to get some question samples from those field tests to kind of see what the New York State tests might look like in 2024. But the state has not released anything. Every workshop I've been to, they haven't really given us specific examples. I do know that New York State is modeling the new assessments off of some of the other states that have already introduced tests, and lots of the other states are using NGSS, which is what our standards are modeled after. I hope I'm not talking I hope you're following me. I'm sorry if I'm giving you lots of information. Just some of this is from if you had gone to a different workshop on standards, this would make sense to you. If you haven't, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to lose you. But so the New York State basically has said that because they're going to follow what some other states are doing. And I've done a lot of research online to come up with this list for you. And so you're not going to see anything from New York State. So if you're wondering why I'm not giving you examples from New York State pages, it's because there aren't any. So I did a lot of research based on what I've learned about what the assessments might look like, because I did a couple days on assessment question writing. So I have some idea of what they're expecting the questions to look like. And then I know that we've had presenters from other states. So I went to those states specifically, and I've pulled examples for you. So if you're wondering why I've got Wisconsin and Delaware and all these weird examples, that's why, okay? I don't know if you are wondering, but if you are, there's the answer. So this sample fifth grade assessment is a question that's also ecosystem related. And this one is from Delaware. And this is a test that's been, these questions have been released and students are using them as practice. And in Delaware, they already have new state tests aligned to the new standards. So before I start scrolling through and you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to say that this is the most extreme example, I think, or the most difficult test question that I would see. So this sample I pulled specifically because it was at the highest level that I could find, so that you know kind of this is the bar up here. So again, this is a fifth grade assessment, and this chunk of questions is 9 pages, okay? So one thing that I find is very difficult for my students when I taught biology, and then even at the middle school level, students really have a hard time understanding that they need to follow a question through multiple pages. So that's something that they definitely will need practice with, is understanding that any content they're presented needs to be followed through. I am expecting this test to be computer-based, just because that's where they've gone with math and ELA. So I am expecting that for science as well. And I know you all have more questions about that, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So this question right here is about organisms in an ocean ecosystem. So the first thing I want to say is that if I spend my whole ecology unit in 4th grade, 8th grade, high school, whatever it is, and I'm talking about deciduous forest and foxes and bears and, all of those plants that live in those ecosystems, and then the students get to the test and it's on oceans, which very much could happen. Now, in the past, when I was teaching biology, it was always like a forest ecosystem or pond on the Regents exam. Most often, I could kind of anticipate that it would be an environment that they're familiar with, or, I would know what pictures they use over and over, and I can make sure I'm teaching my students that. I think with this new test, you're going to see a lot of different environments represented, like ocean. So students are really going to need the skill of being able to take what they've learned from pond ecosystem or forest ecosystem examples and apply that knowledge to a new situation. So I feel like that's a new skill students are really going to need for these new assessments. So you have this information on right whales, fish larvae, and algae. And you can see that there's some size data there. And then there's 3 facts below the picture. So right away, students are going to need to know that everything on the page is important, and they really need to make sure they read all of the information. Then the first question here, you can see it's multiple choice, but they're saying to select 3 correct answers. So that's a huge change. I feel like on our old assessments, it was usually just 1 correct answer. It's rare for students to see a type of question where they have to select 3 correct answers. I know that in a lot of the changes with ELA or math, we've switched to students selecting more than 1 correct answer, but this is kind of a change for science. Okay, question 2. Now, this is another new change. I pulled this question specifically because a lot of the things I want to talk about with changes to the assessment are all represented in this question. So the next question asks students to complete the model by drawing 2 arrows to show how energy flows among the sun, fish larvae, and the algae. Now, usually in the past, when I taught to the old test, students needed to be able to look at a diagram and pull information off. It never happened that they, or very rarely happened, that they had to draw on a diagram or label. So that's a new skill that's going to be extremely important for students, is to have practice drawing diagrams, labeling energy input and output, or inputs to a system and output of a system. So that is one huge shift in these new standards, is instead of students just understanding that algae is a producer and sun is the source of energy, like in the other question I just showed you, students really need to see more of a big picture here, that sun is providing energy, and that it's going to flow to the algae, and then from the algae to the fish larva. So understanding the whole picture and how energy moves, and not just the definition of a producer or a consumer, is going to be really important. And then getting students comfortable with labeling and using arrows to show direction of movement. I'm working on that with my 7th graders, and that's something they don't normally do that when they draw a picture. They're really struggling with learning to use arrows to show movement into and out of things. So that's something that students at the elementary level, I feel like that's a skill that they could start really early on and at the elementary level. And then that would really help when they get to 5th grade with already having that skill down of being able to draw diagrams that represent information that's understood. Okay, so this next question number 3, students need to label each arrow with either energy only, matter only, or both energy and matter. So one thing here is, like, my type A brain, I'm like, okay, there's 4 boxes and there's 3 bullets. So, students need to understand that it's not always matchy-matchy with these new tests, that they need to be able to put information in boxes where it makes sense. And again, we're looking at labeling a diagram and understanding energy flow through the whole system. Okay, so the next question, we're still in the same question stream. They're showing students 2 sets of data here. This is January, this is June. So again, students are really going to need to be good at looking at a diagram and picking out all of the information, or at least noticing all the information on a diagram. So we have sunlight coming from different directions here, and then we have a key showing algae low and high. Now, I'm not sure, like I said, I'm not at the elementary level, but I know that a lot of my 7th grade students are not familiar with keys, and I don't feel like it's something that's really been present in all of the content in the past. So I feel like getting students used to understanding keys, and especially color keys like this, where you're showing an increase in amount, that's going to be really important in order for them to be successful in these new tests. So then they're asking students to look at this diagram, teaching students to kind of write facts on either side, kind of draw on diagrams. The downside is, if this is on a computer, hopefully they'll have some scrap paper, or circle things, like circle what they're noticing. I feel like, those skills are going to be helpful for getting kids to this level of these new tests. So then there's a multiple choice question. Then we move on to another diagram with the key, and they're showing different parts of the year and how that changes the amount of algae present in different areas along the coast. And then they're asking students to use those maps to answer these two questions. Okay, and then again, there's another map that's showing fall migration with the whales on the picture and the amounts of algae. And then they're asking students, and I feel like this is new. I don't feel like you would have seen this on any of the old fourth grade assessments. They're asking students to write a paragraph where they're using their knowledge of energy and matter to construct an explanation of why the whales are bigger at the end of summer than when they first arrived. So, and they have to support their explanation with evidence from the diagram. So that's the new piece. I feel like that other test I showed you at the from the state at the fourth grade level, it was asking students just to say why organisms might move from one location to another. And so in some ways, I feel like this question is easier because it's very specific what they're asking students. It's asking them to say why whales are bigger at the end of summer than when they first arrived. So it's that same content, right? Students are looking at whales migrating and moving. So it's the same kind of content as on that previous test I showed you, but this is asking them to use evidence from the diagram. So in some ways, this question is awesome because it's asking students to actually look at data and pull it off a diagram, and they have the answer right in front of them, and they just have to put it in sentence form. So that's a positive. The downside is if students don't really, it can be overwhelming, right? To have to look at a diagram when they say pull evidence off the diagram. You know, my students now would be like, what do you mean pull evidence off the diagram? That statement doesn't make sense to them. So students are really going to need practice with that. And like I said, the younger we can start with that and really get students in this pattern or in this habit of what does it mean to pull evidence or support an answer with evidence from the diagram. And I know that that same skill is in the new standards for math, for ELA, for social studies. And so I feel like having that uniform skill throughout is going to be really helpful. So that is kind of an overview of the main changes. And so just to kind of summarize, sorry if you don't need the summary, but for me, sometimes I need it to summarize. They're going to really need help with diagrams, understanding to really pull information and spend time looking at the diagram before hopping to the question. Next, they're really going to need help with drawing on diagrams, labeling diagrams, just lots of diagramming and understanding concepts as a whole system and not just memorizing vocabulary and being able to attach algae as a producer, but being able to show energy flow, looking at situations as systems and not so much memorizing the pieces and parts and the vocabulary. And then last would be the big takeaway here is, sorry to make you dizzy if I am. The last big takeaway is to be able to write a paragraph sharing what they know from a diagram that they've looked at and supporting the explanation with evidence. Those are the big takeaway pieces for the major skills students are going to need on these new assessments. Okay, so I have about 16-ish minutes left. I'm trying to go quickly and I feel like I'm not going fast enough. So the next thing I want to show you is a mystery science assessment. In my district, our students are using mystery science. I know that in your region, a lot of students, you are not using mystery science. You're using other testing programs, and that's fine. I feel bad because I can't speak to your program specifically because I have worked with some of the schools in your region, and every school is doing something different. So because of the time on this video, I did not want to talk about every single program, but if you have questions specific to your program, let me know. Or if what I'm presenting isn't working for you because of your program that you're using for science, please let me know and I will look at your specific program and help you out with that. Okay, so mystery science, I just wanted to show some of these assessments because they're not at all in line with the new assessments for New York State. I know mystery science is going back and they're making some changes, especially at 5th grade, they were starting there, and those new assessments are much more aligned, but this is just kind of a heads up to really look at the assessments and make sure that you are adjusting these before giving them to students. So this first question, if it never rained, do you think the world would look different? Explain. So I feel like this question is very vague, and I would get really weird questions from answers, sorry, from my students. They would be like, if it never rained, it would look like a desert here. Or if it never rained, everything would die. And I don't know, if it never rained, it would be awesome because I would be able to play outside every day. Like, those are the types of answers I feel like I would get. So they want students to focus specifically on erosion in this question. So I feel like a better way to ask this question would be to show a diagram of different months throughout the year and the rainfall in those different months, and then have them match those rainfall amounts or the month with pictures showing more and less erosion. So kind of matching information, pull in some data, pull in some diagrams, and make sure this question you're asking is very specific, like match the level of erosion to the amount of rainfall. And you wouldn't have to necessarily use the vocab in that question, but just to match. So that's one way to kind of change that question. This question, it says, here's a map showing 2 rivers. If there are mountains, where do you think they are? So whenever you provide diagrams like this, I don't like this diagram because it's not telling you that these are the rivers. And if I'm looking at this, I don't know, is it a path with people walking down it? Is this like a roadway leading to the ocean? I don't know. It's not specific enough. So again, if you can have color, or if you can label this as a river, label the arrows as direction of flow, something, okay, to give a little more information. And so students would have a better idea of what the question's asking. And then this goes on. Because of time, I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but we're going to talk about rewriting some of these questions. And so this is just one example of a question that if you are using mystery science and this is one of the units you teach, then that's one way that you could look at this question and rewrite it. Okay, so this is a sample 3rd grade assessment. I just want to briefly show you some of these examples because they're written differently, and depending on your teaching style or how you like to organize things, some of these might be better for you. So this assessment question that I gave you was really just the question. If you feel like when you're exploring different assessments, if you want something that's a little bit more detailed, this gives you specific, it breaks it down by the 3D format using the blue, orange, and green areas from the standards. This is a SNAP assessment from Stanford. So Stanford has an NGSS assessment project, and I do have their link here for you in a different spot. And they have a lot of great assessment questions that are aligned to NGSS and therefore would work for New York State. So I'm not going to go through this question, but it gives you some examples. This is a different style question, but it's still asking students to really find evidence from the information given and then support claims with evidence. And then it also has a rubric for you, so it kind of gives you an idea of what is expected of students. So this is a similar rubric to what would be used to grade that 5th grade assessment coming out from New York State. So this just gives you a little bit more information than the other sample that I shared with you. Okay, so SNAP assessments, this is the actual link under the question I pulled for you. This is the actual link to the Stanford assessment project, and this gives you a lot more examples. Some of these, though, are at the upper level, and so if you're lower level elementary, this site may not be awesome for you, but it would at least give you some idea of what the goal is. And then Wisconsin was another state where there were some great examples. Again, I'm not going to click around because of time. You guys can do that on your own. But I do want to show you this New York State Science Consortium page. So this is a page that was put together by teachers and other state level science focused people who are providing resources specific for New York State teachers. And if you scroll down, there is a part on assessments, and there's lots of links here too that give you more information than I'm giving you in this workshop. So I'm really a huge supporter of me kind of giving you the basics and then you reaching out and tell me what you want more, what you want for more information. It really does depend on what grade level you're at, what kit or what science curriculum you're using. So it's not like a one size fits all for this. I feel like if you just get the basics from me, and then we can, when we do our one-on-one meetings after this, I can kind of help tailor my information to what you need specifically. So there is so much information on assessments. I mean, I could do a full day workshop on this and not cover it all, but like I said, it wouldn't be specific to what each of you needs. Okay, so they're just Delaware. There's some more examples. The ones that I do want to focus on right now, though, is the wonder of science, because what I'm going to ask that you do is after you watch this 45-minute video on assessment, your task to earn your little badge or sticker is to rewrite 5 assessment questions from your current curriculum. And so we'll go over the specifics of what I think should be done for that. But so your one really good resource for this is the Wonder of Science. So if you aren't quite sure to where to start with rewriting those, if you go to the Wonder of Science, it's an amazing site. So there's so much fun stuff on here. If you have time to explore it, I would definitely recommend it. I haven't even really looked at it as much as I should at my level, but sometimes when I'm stuck on a specific content piece, I'll come here and get lots of great ideas. Okay, so performance assessments. If you click on any grade level, you can see that they have all the grade levels here. I'm going to go with 4th grade. And you click on any of the standards, it sends you to a page where it gives you the specific standard, and then it has all these different resources. So phenomena you can use. If you have attended a workshop on standards and then you know about phenomena. If not, again, I highly recommend that you let me know and I can put together a video for you, or find a workshop in your area specifically on the standards. Phenomena, using phenomena is really an awesome way to teach science. There are some videos, there's learning plans, instructional resources, and assessments. So the sample assessment that they have for you, it's the same one every time. So I was super excited thinking they had a sample for like each content piece in each standard, but they don't. It's just the one I pulled for you from the Stanford. It's the same example. So they have that one example for you. So that was kind of a bummer because I was hoping for one on each like standard, but they do have some assessments shared from other teachers. So there are some other things you can click on as examples of assessments that other teachers have done. So after this workshop, your task is to rewrite 5 questions, but you could also go here and look and see what other teachers are doing. And if that's something that you would, if there's something already done that you would use, great. Instead of rewriting 5 questions, find 5 questions that you think you would use and would hit the content that you're wanting to teach. So there's anchor charts here, there's phenomena that work for the content, and then there's some videos from the site creator with more information about the content. And then there's learning plans too. So this is more like a unit plan where if you were wanting to put together a unit, there's a learning plan here for you. There's blank templates that they provide, and then there's also some samples they have for you with the content filled in. So that might be helpful during the second video that I'm going to do with you, but the information's all there for you. Okay, and then Edulastic is kind of like quizzes. If you've ever used that, I'm not going to open it, but it's a database full of different questions linked to standards where you can kind of, and it's great because it's not just high school where a lot of these sites are. This is kindergarten all the way up through. So you can pick a specific standard and the site will spit out questions for you on that standard. The only concern I have with this Edulastic site is they're not all based on the new standards. Some of the questions are more old question style. Okay, so I have about 5 minutes left with you. Oops, I just clicked off that page. So the last thing I want to do is just kind of go over what your task is for after this video. Because it's a video lesson and I don't get to talk to you during this, I really want to check in with all of you. So I'm going to ask that you either research and find 5 questions that fit with the content you're teaching, and then we'll kind of talk about the 5 you've chosen and ways that we could enhance them or use them in your classroom. And then I really just want to do a quick video meet with you to kind of see if you have any questions after this presentation, and then point you in the direction of other resources if you need it. So those, depending on the number of people that sign up for this workshop, those video one-on-one meets, they might be, 5 of you. It might be just one of you, kind of depends how this goes. But I will be in touch with you after you watch this video so that we can kind of work out a schedule for that quick Google Meet or Zoom, whatever you prefer, between the two of us. So the last thing I want to share with you, and this is not something professional that I've gotten on the website, off the website. Keep in mind, I'm a full-time teacher, so I don't have fancy video equipment here to share this stuff with you guys. And I don't have my own website. I don't have any of that. This is just kind of something I do on the side to help other teachers. So this is something I've put together, so it's not perfect, but it a lot of teachers were asking questions. And so these are kind of my answers in one space as far as where we're trying to get students to in understanding content. So this is something a lot of teachers have heard: claim, evidence, and reasoning. And so this is kind of the way we're looking at teaching content. So students, the past Regents exams, or not Regents, and grade level 4, grade level 8, these past state exams had a lot of skills that were a level 1 for students. So making or stating an observation, looking at data and making, giving one little fact about the data, multiple choice questions. Those are all kind of level 1 skills. We're currently in the process of kind of trying to bring students up to a level 2 presently, to kind of prepare them for the end all goal of level 3 and really being able to reach this explain your reasoning piece for the new state tests. So teachers were asking me for examples of what I meant by bringing students from kind of a level 1 to a level 3. And I personally need visual. I need it explained to me with, examples and detail that helps my brain. So if this helps you, awesome. If it doesn't, then you can just ignore it. So this is making a claim. These are different skills students would do to kind of build this middle level. And then for the new tests, these are things they should be able to do to get to that explain your reasoning part, and some of those higher level thinking skills that are going to be on that new test. So this is specific examples on the topic impacts of angle of light on seasons, day and night, etc. So these are some specific examples of tasks I would have students do to get them to that understanding. This is at an upper elementary or middle school level. So again, if you're lower elementary, this would not be appropriate. But if you really wanted help with looking at something like this at your grade level, please reach out to me and I can build something for you. Okay, this is a lesson plan screening tool. We're going to skip that for now. But for the assessment question screening tool, this is where I would want you to look at. I'm guessing you all are not going to, when I'm asking you to take 5 questions and rewrite them, I'm guessing you're not going to write 5 questions. That's a huge task. I want you to just pull 5 questions on any topic that you teach. So pull 5 assessment questions from that you already give students in class, pull them from the mystery science, if that's your content, whatever kit you use, pull 5 questions. And then I want you to try to rewrite those to beef them up a little bit, right? To make them match that sample question I gave you from Delaware. So I want you to try to kind of increase the level a bit and increase those higher order thinking skills. So whatever question you choose, you'd want to type in here whatever the student is doing that's making a claim. So multiple choice, and then type out the question, type out what the multiple choice question is in here. That's part of your series of your question. Or if part of your question expects students to know that algae is a producer, you would put algae is a producer. So that's part of that question. support the claim with evidence. Okay, so whatever part of your question asks students to support a claim they're making with evidence. So, like if they had a graph showing that a whale was heavier in summer versus in winter based on food supply, that would be supporting a claim with evidence. Explain your reasoning. That might be where students would explain why whales migrate each year. Okay. So if you need help with this, that's what our video meeting is for. Sorry, that's my timer. So I'm almost up on time. So I'll try to hurry this up. I'm going to go a little over 45 minutes. So I apologize. But I really want to get this information to you. So you don't have to use this little chart here. Really what I want you to do is just pull 5 questions, rewrite them so that they're at a higher level, try to add in more detail. And then you're going to video meet with me to kind of go over those 5 questions and talk about how you rewrote them, or if you're really lost and aren't quite sure what I'm expecting or how to go about pulling good assessment questions. That's what we're going to use the video meeting for. So it'll be a 15 to 30 minute video meeting where we kind of talk about those 5 questions you've pulled, how you would rewrite them, or we can talk about where to start with your content. So I really want this time to be beneficial for you and not just busy work. So you pull 5 questions that you feel like you might use this year, or ask for a video meeting from me first. And then if you have another task in mind other than writing those 5 questions that you feel like would be of greater benefit, video meet with me and we can do something different. I'm totally fine with that. I just want to kind of touch base with you and make sure you're comfortable with pulling questions or editing questions so that it helps prepare students for the new 5th grade assessment. So one last thing I want to say before I leave today is that these assessment questions it doesn't have to be a test or a quiz. I rarely give tests and quizzes in my class. Many times it might be exploratory stations that students do, and they have to answer pointed questions on those exploratory stations to show what they've learned to me. So at the elementary level especially, I know that you're not often assessing science for grades, or you're looking at their skill level, not necessarily if it's a 95 or a 100. So, these don't have to be summative assessments. This can be just simple questions that you would provide for students when they're completing a hands-on activity. So I'm not looking for specifically test questions. It's just even a worksheet that you would give students on a specific content or a specific topic. So I'm not giving you a specific template or anything to fill out because, like I said, I want this to be beneficial for you. So just focus on pulling 5 questions and creating either a worksheet or rewriting those. This is really kind of open-ended. If if that doesn't work for you and you need a more specific directive of what it is I want you to do, please reach out to me via email and we can kind of chat about it and talk about what would work for you. These other links I'm going to be talking to you about at the next session. So the video 2, the second video will be half an hour, and there'll be another task at the end of that to get a second badge for assessments. And these unit plan resources right here, we'll be talking about that then, these shared resources, and also this FEH BOCES community. But if you know you're not going to do the second workshop and you want to explore this stuff and then have questions about it, please email me and I'm happy to answer those for you. Okay, so please reach out via email with any questions. I'm excited to hear from you and have a great day. Bye.